So
So,
what we have right here is just a single button, say for punch. Let's say because the HCM system that is connected to has punch interpretation rules where they can accept any type of punch. It knows if it's an in punch, an out punch, a lunch in or lunch out. But the same button can also be expanded. So if your employees are more I'm used to seeing like punch in, punch out, lunch in, lunch out, then it can also be set up for that configuration, as well as you have some compliancy pieces to that as well. So in states like California who have attestation, they actually need to define, what they're actually punching to and be able to attest to it. And so for some states, like California and even some parts of Florida who have those attestation rules, I say the punch-in experience needs to be tailored.
hmm.
Also,
So yeah, show us some of the magic with these punching capabilities you have.
so right now I have it actually set up for facial recognition. It's very quick. You don't need any prerequisite or anything like that. It finds an employee. I'm Elijah in this system. And so now it's identified me. It uses the API and sends the punch directly to the time card. But it does not actually have to be just facial recognition. It can also be something like a QR code, for instance. So there's a QR
Oh,
code.
so pretty simple to change out, eh?
Exactly. And you can
Right.
toggle
And
toggle in between them very quickly as well. So if you want it to be even be like a pin or something along those lines, I say it can even be a pin interface for you.
You're saying something on it?
yeah, so like right now it's pretty straightforward. Submitting the punch through one submit punch button, but as Tyler was touching on it, it does not have to be that way. For one use case, you might want people to clock in, clock out, then go out for a meal, then go back for a meal. But if we look a bit further, there are instances where you might want your employees to take a mandatory 30-minute lunch break. Now, if you hit punch in, and if you can just simply punch out without any validation, that purpose is not served. What we can do is internally, directly from hrPad, build up a rule set where if you have clocked in for your day, if you haven't taken a 30-minute break, you won't be able to clock out. If you try to clock out, it will remind you like, hey, you didn't take your meal break today, or if you did, it was not for 30 minutes. So please make sure you completed your meal break and took a punch out. We can enforce similar things between punch in and punch out as well. So it doesn't always have to be simple, or it doesn't always have to be complicated. And
So,
there is like this. Mhm.
so let me clarify. So there are rules like employees must take 30-minute break in the whole, like the duration of their working shift, right?
Right, right. Yep,
So without them taking that break, they won't be clocked out for the day.
exactly. And this is a real use
And
case. If I dive into like a bit deeper into actually a real case scenario that hrPad solved, so we had this particular use case where there are employees who are below 18 who are working part-time, and there are employees who are above 18. So if you're an employee who is below 18, you are definitely supposed to take a meal break. But if you are not below 18, you are not bound by those rules. So you can punch in, punch out, do whatever you want. And that is something a WFM could not facilitate, or a generic clock could not facilitate. But we could do that. We knew what the employee's age were. We were actually calculating it based on their date of birth. And if they were below 18, we had them going through like all those hoops. They had to take a meal break. They had to do a punch out in a certain way. But in the same hrPad, in the same tablet, if you are an employee who is above 18, you don't have to follow any of those. You can clock in, you can clock out the very next minute. That is fine. Whereas if you are under 18, you cannot do that. It will enforce a lunch break for you. And that is like a very good use case where WFM could not do that, but hrPad
okay,
could do that very easily.
so this is interesting. So imagine someone comes in, you have 8-hour shift, and when are they supposed to take the meal break? Is there any rule, like you have to take the meal break in the middle of it, or the rule is anytime?
For this particular use case, there wasn't. But then again, there are use cases where you might want to take a meal, you might enforce a meal break after five hours of working. So there has to be a gap between your clock in and you going in for a meal break. The great thing is hrPad can also facilitate that. So it
So what if,
knows the gaps.
how would, say, imagine this now, employees working, busy, forgot about it, it's already 5 hours, and they didn't take the break. What can hrPad do?
Right.
So
HR
one
can
thing that we
definitely,
can actually
yeah.
do that be, just to kind of get it from before the problem even starts is that we can even trigger like text messages to even be sent to these employees before they need to take a break, kind of giving them a soft reminder, hey, in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever the case may be, whatever you deem necessary, just to give them that nudge to let them know your break's coming up. You need to prepare, start finishing up your tasks so you can go and get on your break. And that way the company is not penalized because there
So
is a
you're
lot of
saying
times.
that, so if someone has to take meal break within 5 hours, and as 5 hour window coming up, hrPad can send them a text message, SMS, remind them, it's like, hey, you will be needing to take the meal break within next 30 minutes or so. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So let's say like
Yep.
4.5 hours into the shift. So we give them a half hour, we'll go ahead and send them a message, letting them know, hey, you've not taken a meal break yet. You need to go ahead and start finishing up your task so you can start taking a meal break by X amount of time even. So we can give them those instructions and make sure that your company stays compliant.
Wow, this is amazing. So we can enforce with hrPad all these meal break rules based on the state or company policy or union labor contract, whatever it is, that we can enforce all these rules, and also we can add the SMS capabilities that we can remind the employees how to behave or how to interact with the system as it required by the rule. That's correct, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and it doesn't even have to be limited to just like meal breaks. It can even be for like before their shifts even start. So we can ask them like, hey, are you going to be able to make it in today? And we can set to like, let's say an hour before their shift. And then, it comes up a half hour, goes by and they haven't responded. It can send a notification to the manager even and let them know, hey, they've not received a notification yet. You can follow up with them.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, what other cases, like is any other break rules, like maybe some company may require you to take 10-minute break every 2 hours. Is there anything like that?
Yep. So an amazing use case that we have seen is, so there was this particular use case where employees had different hourly rule sets. So if like there are some employees whose hourly rule set was they had to take a meal break like after 4 hours after they clock in, and there were employee groups that had to take their meal break 6 hours after clocking in. It's very difficult for an employee to keep a track of that. So what hrPad did for them is the employee walks up to the tab and they clock in. During their clock in, when it's done, they actually see a pop-up which says like, hey, Mr. X, your clock-in time was this, and you are supposed to take your meal break at that time. So it added 4 hours to their clock-in time and showed them what their exact meal time is gonna be. And it was all dynamic. It was not like a fixed number that we're adding up. What it was doing is based on what type of rule set that employee falls under, it would inherit that information. And if someone is required to take their meal break 6 hours after clocking in, it would add that 6, show that information. If it was different, it would show that information for them. And this time there was no texting. They're actually seeing it when they're clocking in. They're getting a reminder. They're seeing the exact time they're supposed to go on a break, which worked wonders for this use case.
Fantastic. So basically, this AI engine, we can configure it anyway, and it will orchestrate all the rules, whatever the local rules, company rules, and basically employee, nothing will fall through the crack, and both parties will be happy. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep.
And talking about things not being able to fall through the crack and being